joining us now. We'll take some more phone calls coming up. Rob, welcome back. Nice to talk with you, sir.
I'm delighted to be here, Todd. Thanks for having me.
Well, it's good to have you be had because you're in the center of so much conversation at the state capitol. What are the things that are top of mind right now? What do you want people to know? What's the word you want to spread?
Well, I've been listening to your show for the last half hour or so and enjoying it very much, as I always do. The other day when we talked, I was calling you from the quietest place I could find at the state capitol, which was a broom closet, essentially on the second floor of the Capitol building, on the opposite side from where there were thousands of people expressing their opposition to the bill that removes the religious exemption for vaccines, a bill which really is not about vaccines at all, but rather about individual liberty, parental rights, and government overreach. And there was just so much noise. I had a tough time even finding a place to make the call. And even though I was locked in a room across the building on the other side, I still had trouble hearing you. So it's a big improvement to talk to you today. But I got to tell you, I was inspired. And listening to the Republican Senate leader Kevin Kelly a few moments ago on your show, I can tell he's inspired also. I can feel something happening in Connecticut where Republicans feel like they're actually have some wind behind them and are starting to, be heard in a way that maybe they haven't been in recent years.
Well, this is courtesy of the Democrats who are doing what people in power do when they have too much power, and that is using it egregiously. And I think that's inspiring some folks to action, and you feel that action and you say, okay, this is possible. You get that old toll feeling. Somebody's got to write a song about that.
That's a great way to put it. What's so funny is just all of the things that are happening simultaneously. Watching what's happening on the federal level, Biden's speech the other night, this demonstration that happened in Connecticut. It's all connected in some way. And I think, the message that I would like people to understand really, I think, is, in my opinion, what's happening is the Democrats have been surviving a very long time by perpetuating a fictional platform, that they are somehow the party of the little guy, or they're the party of the working man, or they're the ones that are fighting for civil rights, or they're the ones opposing racism. And that's all baloney. And anyone who's actually informed and watching politics on a regular basis, they know that's baloney. But the average person still has been buying into that for a long time. And then things will happen when you start to have, well, I'll use the religious exemption bill as an example. The vast majority of people who are standing outside protesting were probably self-identified Democrats, not all of them, of course, but you're talking mostly about young parents, mothers in particular, probably late 20s, early 30s. These are the same people that probably cost Republicans elections in the last few cycles because of issues that concern them. And I think we're going to get a lot of them back. And I think people are starting to become aware that the Democrat Party is not that party of the little guy and the working man and that sort of thing.
Well, we see that from the last election cycle and the polling of small groups of people and the shifts that took place around the country. There is a national trend, a national recognition that Republicans are the party of the people and that Democrats only represent special interest groups and special interest voters. And that's creating a little fear on the part of Democrats, I think, as it should, but that's not going to stop them from overreaching, is it?
No, definitely not. I don't think they know how to do anything else. And Connecticut Democrats have been bolstered in recent years by, growing numbers. Republicans came back over the last decade from 2010, 11. That was when I was first elected. Every cycle, we would pick up a few seats and actually got to almost parity in 2018 before it all essentially fell apart and the Democrats basically regained huge majorities in both chambers. And I think they've been riding high on that. The presidential election obviously went their way in Connecticut in a big way, which helped them pick up even more seats in Connecticut. So, but now I'm starting to see signs that they're weakening, and weakening because I think that they don't have a good national leader, and they have overreached. They've overreached so significantly in just this last several months. with the governor's executive orders and the shutting down the Capitol building and doing only Zoom meetings and moving an agenda that is just really, really extremely progressive, trying to brace every policy that we do on the subject of race. Oh, that reminds me, actually, Todd, I don't mean to keep rambling on, but I really enjoyed listening to Tom Shattuck this morning, and he had a guest on who said something that I think is so important and bears repeating. And it's something that I've been thinking about for a long time but could never put my finger on. And he said that the Democrats today are much like the Jim Crow era of the past when it comes to race, because they are treating race as if it's determinative, which basically means that they are putting people into buckets and saying that your race and gender is the only thing that matters about you. And that is so true in the way they approach policy. And obviously, that's a racist position, in my opinion, and it's fundamentally wrong and anti-American.
Well, it is, and I think that's why they've embraced it, because they like the anti-Americanism in it, and it suits them, because that's where their roots are, I think. This dynamic that you're talking about, that there could be some kind of turning point being reached, the general dynamics of an electoral cycle is you have a presidential election, and 2 years later, the party that won the presidential election loses seats in Congress, and the pendulum swings back in the other direction. There's this natural equilibrium that voters seem to want to maintain, whether it's consciously or if it's just some built-in structural dynamic where they keep swinging back and forth as they see the sharp edges of the party in power start to hurt a little bit when you bump into them. Are you sensing that could be the possibility of what's being created right now by Democratic overreach?
Well, I think nationally that's probably much more accurate than in Connecticut. I think in Connecticut, the Democrats are just so overwhelming in their majorities and their power, but they are also overwhelming in their extreme use of that power to promote a radical agenda. So there's obviously going to be pushback as people become aware of their motivations. And this religious exemption bill is just one example where you have people that are self-identified Democrats saying, what exactly are you doing to me? But at the same time, we've got a lot bigger things to overcome if we're ever going to straighten out Connecticut and national politics. And that is this tribal nature of things. I've got just as many emails in my inbox thanking me for speaking up and fighting for parental rights and individual freedom the other day on that bill, as I do from people that are still saying the typical Democrat talking points on the issue, which is that anyone that opposes this is anti-vaccine and they're anti-science, and that's just baloney. There's no one who actually understands the issue or watched any of the commentary on the floor of the Senate or the House could believe that, because clearly we made very strong arguments, and most of the people arguing against the bill, including myself, are not anti-vaccine at all. I've got all my vaccines, and generally speaking, I would say vaccines are good. But at the same time, I believe that every individual should have the fundamental right of bodily autonomy, and that the government has no right to stick a needle in anyone. In fact, if the government has a right to stick a needle in you, then you don't have any rights at all.
State Senator Rob Sampson is here from Wolcott. What you're talking about is something we see nationally, in particular, this picking of sides and then being absolutist. And everybody was outraged, or everybody in the media, I guess the media machinery and the Democratic machinery was outraged for 4 years over Donald Trump and everything he did. And now the Democrats are doing the same things that they objected to Trump doing, and that is what you were just alluding to, being tribal in their politics. So the proposals we see coming out of the National Democratic Party all have to do with representing their base, absolutely, and ignoring, for the most part, what would be pro-American and center-American viewpoints. That's how it seems to me, and that seems to me the potential for poisoning the well and turning things in another direction. That overreach that goes against the sense of what America is to the average American.
Yeah, I hope you're right, Todd, and I hope that the sense of the average person on the street is exactly what's happening. I just fear that because the Democrats have such a incredible power, and they really do. I mean, they control almost every aspect of the information that gets to citizens.
Yes.
Unless citizens themselves are digging for it or listening to your show, for example. But, I mean, they control every aspect of education, even in red states. They have control of the education system there. They control entertainment, the news media. The news media in Connecticut has gone completely left, which is contrary to what has happened throughout American history. The news media has always been there to be really a thorn in the side of whoever's in power on purpose. Because that's their job, to keep those people honest. Today in Connecticut, the news media in our major newspapers are just promoting the left-wing version of everything. Ned Lamont can do no wrong. The Connecticut Democrats can do no wrong. There have been countless news stories written recently just attacking Republicans unfairly, repeating talking points right from the Democrat Party. And you can't have a system like that and expect the average citizen to be able to wade through it and make objective decisions on what, good politics is. That education has to come back in some way. And you say it all the time that we've got to take back education, and you're so right about that.
State Senator Rob Sampson. Hold on. We'll take a quick break and continue the conversation here on WTIC. Of the Wolcott Sampsons. I just said that. I don't even know if there's any other Sampsons there.
There are a couple, Todd.
All right. So, Rob, you're talking like Republicans have this huge structural disadvantage, which I feel. But then I say to myself, well, Republicans have been dominating. Republicans, as you mentioned, pulled even in the state Senate a couple of years ago. And nationally, the Republican Party's been controlling the majority of state houses, had the White House, had the Senate for a couple of years out of the last few. So why is it so bad all of a sudden? It feels like when one party's on top, that's forever, and the other side feels that deeply, that all is lost. I hear these all is lost statements all the time from either the Democrats or Republicans, depending on which 2-year cycle we're in.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree, except I think it's very, very different talking about the state of Connecticut politics versus what's happening nationally. And it's true. Republicans are in a relatively strong position nationally, even despite the fact that they don't hold any of our federal government or the presidency. We have lots and lots of state government, majorities. And, we're within striking distance. And I think that that can swing back at any moment. But Connecticut's a special case, as you know. The Democrats have controlled Connecticut for 40 years. And sadly, Republicans in this state have been floundering, trying to find a way to get back in the majority. And there's been two distinct viewpoints. One of them, the one that has been winning the argument, but also losing the battle, because the proof is that we have not crawled our way back into the majority, and that is that we have to keep moderating our positions over and over to accommodate what our constituents want. And what our constituents want is based on what they're being fed every day, which is progressive news media. And that's a mistake, because all you end up doing at that point is offering Democrat light versus Democrat, and we have difficulty winning those seats. My mission in politics, Todd, has always been to show my colleagues, my Republican colleagues, that you can go out and be a fearless fighter for American principles and values, for conservative principles, and you can still win. And I want to be an example to them. Unfortunately, it's very hard for people to acknowledge that. They want to dismiss it based on the makeup of the district and so forth. But you know what's happening is, at some point, we will reach an issue that galvanizes the Republican Party and allows us to act in unison. And that's what happened the other day. This fight for parental rights and individual liberty galvanized our party, and we are pushing back and going to use it as a wedge. And to listen to the fight coming from Kevin Kelly on the subject of the gas tax, knowing
it's exciting.
Change. Yeah, we're going to take it to them for a change. I'm so excited about it, I can't even tell you. And I wish we had done that a long time ago on many more issues.
Well, you've got to reach this point of equilibrium where the other side's overreaching enough, and that pushes Republicans enough that they start rising up and saying, enough, we're not going to take it anymore. And so maybe here's the moment.
Right. Well, I mean, the problem is that in the past, Republicans have always had an every man for himself kind of attitude, and I'm not going to be singled out as being opposed to this issue. It seems very popular, so I'm just going to vote with the Democrats. And we have splintered and lost any sense of unity or a common message. And I see signs of having a common message now, and it's really, really electrifying to me, and I'm excited about it. I was thrilled the other day that our Senate Republican caucus stuck together on that bill, and we fought as a team, and we left unified. And today we're fighting on the gas tax, again unified with a common theme, which is we are going to fight for the citizens of the state of Connecticut and not let the Democrats pass yet another record-breaking tax hike on the backs of the average person in the state.
Yeah, well, that's what we need is some resolve. All right, Senator Sampson, thank you, sir. Good to talk with you. We'll talk to you again perhaps next week. All righty. State Senator Rob Sampson from Wolcott.